On average, the United States spends about $12,000 per full-time equivalent student on elementary/secondary school. On the other hand, Mexico spends about $3,000 on their students. Although this statistic did not come to much of a shock to me, I believe it sends a pretty clear message as to the need of the schools in Mexico, especially those in rural areas. This knowledge, as well as the other knowledge that I acquired from much of my research, as well as my desire to give back to the country whose culture has shaped me into who I am today, I decided to find a contact in Mexico so that he can create a link between me and Mexico and the schools so that I can make my ambitions to make a change in one of the schools reality. My project literally fell into my hands when I met this man on my trip to Jalostotitlan, Jalisco, Mexico on the December of 2015. This man was my sister's husband's uncle, who happened to be the overseer of all the schools in the area. He would go to each one of the schools and then would see their need and would then progress to go to the government and tell them what needs the schools needed funding for. I remember one of my first phone calls with him when I was back home, when he told me about how one of the school's plumbing had been stolen. He told me that he'd gone to the government and had asked them for money, but the government was refusing to give it to the school. I think this is very clear that the government doesn't really care much about the schools and their well-being. That is why I began my project. Hello, my name is Gladys Castaneda, and this is my project, Enhancing Education in Jalisco. So to begin, the first thing that I needed to do was have a contact of one of the schools in Mexico. So that's when Mr. Jauregui gave me the contact of Ms. Mercedes, which is the woman on my left. She is the director of Clemente Orozco Elementary School, which is the elementary school that we went to go help. After countless hours on the phone with her, I began to know a little bit more as to the need of the school. To begin, there was a lack of security. Anyone was able to enter and exit the school at any time. So they were afraid of things being stolen or being vandalized. They had one laptop computer for their entire school and other resources that they literally could not afford to replace if they were stolen. So I knew that this was one of the main problems that I wanted to address. Another issue was the lack of space for these children to become educated. The entire school itself was probably the size of this room and the next room over. They had over 100 students to teach. They had a kitchen inside their school, and this kitchen was not only being utilized to make food, but also to teach the children, since they had no other space to teach the children in. I remember the first time I met Ms. Mercedes. One of the first things that she said to me was that as long as there were students and there was a teacher, there was a school. It didn't matter if there was no roof over their head. This phrase, I think, perfectly embodies the optimism and refusal to give in to the oppression that had been given to them by their government. So, with the help of my partner, this was a picture that they sent me of the school. So this was the first picture that they sent me, and it's basically the front of the school, which looks more like a prison than it does an actual school. This is another picture that they sent us, which is their playground. So this is, as you can tell, they have literally nothing to play with. The wall behind them is a dirt wall that is on the verge of crumbling down and possibly injuring one of the children. But the government is still not doing anything to help fund for this. So now, with the help of my partner, Harrison Chappell, we decided to set a couple goals. So our first goal, of course, was the fence. Their security was our #1 concern. After that, we wanted to address the lack of space that they had. So we wanted to make sure that some of our fundraising would go to build a new classroom. The next aspect that we wanted to encompass was health. There's a large problem with obesity and unhealthy eating and lack of exercise in Mexico. So we want to incorporate some of the knowledge that we had into their school. One of the last things that I really wanted to incorporate was a pen-pal-like interaction. I feel like here at Newman, a lot of time we live in this kind of bubble where we don't really realize the world that's outside of it. I wanted to show some of the students here at Newman that people live completely different lives. And although that's the case, people also in other countries live basically the exact same life as us. So I wanted to kind of bring that kind of interaction to make this link between Newman and the school in Mexico. So of course, with all these goals in mind, we needed to fundraise. So we set a $5,000 goal, and I'm very proud to say that we did reach that goal. So to begin, we had a hot chocolate sale, which as you can imagine did not raise us $5,000. So then Harrison set up a GoFundMe page, where we got most of our money from. But I also knew that I wanted to incorporate more awareness around our area. So to do so, I went to my local church that I'm part of, St. Rose Church, and I talked to Matt Conley, and he helped me book the parish hall so that I could hold a fiesta dinner. I then went to each one of the masses at church, and I invited parishioners to come to our dinner. So after selling multiple tickets for a dinner, it was a week before, and Harrison gave me a phone call about how we did not have any restaurants to donate to us. We were told that restaurants would be willing to give us free food so we could serve at the dinner, but Harrison and I didn't really have much guidance through our entire project, and so we came across this large issue. So I looked at my dad and I told him, "Dad, is there any way that we can make food for all these people?" So about 3 days before a fiesta dinner, Harrison and I and my family gathered around my kitchen table and made 300 tamales for the entire dinner. Not to mention made beans, rice, salsas, bought tablecloths and sodas and everything else necessary for the dinner. Fortunately, it was a success. We raised over $2,000. So that was really awesome. We spread awareness, and there was a lot of people that came up to us and asked us more about our project. So while the fundraising, so this is a picture of us and the tamales, us serving at the dinner. So while the entire fundraising was happening, that's when I began the kind of interaction between the students in Mexico and the students here. So to do so, I contacted Miss Mercedes, the director, and I asked her if she can have the children write us letters so that the students here at Newman can respond back to them. And that's exactly what they did. So the picture on the right is of one of the letters where the little girl talked about her family and basically her siblings. But the picture on the left is one that made me quite honestly cry. So at the bottom here, you see a slide, monkey bars, and a swing set. And it says, "Algún día desearía ver a mi escuela así," which translates to, "I hope that one day my school can look like this." So as you can tell, one of our main goals was to get them that play structure, since the little boy had drawn it for us. But not only did this serve as a kind of link between the classes, because the Spanish 3 honors class did respond to each one of these letters, and we're hoping to get a response back from the students again, but it also served for me as a source of something tangible to hold to kind of connect me with the children. I feel like something that I struggled with throughout my project was not being able to actually have met these children in person and spending all these hours and days of fundraising and creating events without actually having met them previously. So this helped me kind of like keep going, have something that I could see that these children really needed help. So after many months of fundraising and hard work, Harrison and I arrived to Jalostotitlan, Mexico. So this was us on their playground. So the first thing that we did when we arrived to Mexico was that we bought them their play structure that they wanted. So unfortunately, because the fence still hasn't been built for the school, they're afraid of it being vandalized or stolen, so it's being stored in a warehouse until they actually finish the building process. Ms. Mercedes actually called me, and she told me that as of May 8th, they have begun the construction. So we are hoping to receive pictures of them with the play structure very soon. So to go along with us buying the play structure, we also wanted to incorporate other supplies. So this is actually the soccer ball that they were playing with. As you can tell, this is a soccer ball once the plastic has come off. They couldn't afford to buy a new one, so of course they would try to use the ones that they had as much as possible. So Harrison and I got the children a bunch of new soccer balls and jump ropes and other things, cones, goals and stuff, so that they can play with. We also got them a bunch of papers and coloring books and coloring pencils and everything so that they can have that for their school. So not only did I want to incorporate health as an exercise, but also as to what they were eating. So after doing research, I found that added sugars contribute to 12.5% of total energy intake in Mexican diet, and that sugar-sweetened beverages contribute to 70.3 of those added sugars. There's a large problem with the kind of industry of especially Coca-Cola in Mexico, where there's kind of like a corruption in hiding the truth of health from people and making sure to advertise Coke and a bunch of junk food a lot. So one of the places that Harrison and I went to get the soccer balls, there was a lot of sodas and juices everywhere. Everywhere we went, there was just sodas, and it was advertised everywhere, even painted on the walls of streets. Coca-Cola everywhere. Basically, it's a way to try and force these eating habits amongst the people there. This is a picture that I took of a chocolate bar when I was in Mexico. It's one of my favorite pictures. It's a picture of a chocolate bar that says it has milk in it, so you get your calcium and energy from it, and it has a little boy's face on it. So I think that this kind of advertisement to the people there is what's creating this high rates of obesity and other problems that come around health. So Harrison was able to get water bottles for all the children. As you can tell, they're very happy with their water bottles. It was a very hot day, the day that we got there, and they were playing soccer, and they were getting super hot, so they were filling up their water bottles and drinking from them. And I made sure to tell them that they weren't allowed to put juice or soda in it because it would clog the filter, so hopefully they'll continue to just drink water from it. So overall, we met all of our goals. We fundraised enough for the fence and to start off the building. We incorporated aspects of health and a link between our school and their school. But we also did a lot more than we could have imagined. So to begin with, Mr. Jauregui had gone to the government and had told them about how we were going. They basically decided to fundraise for the fence, and our money would then go to the building. I believe that we created a kind of awareness towards the school when we brought light to them. They had been neglected by the government because the government had refused to help pay for the things that they needed. It seemed as though we needed to go so that the government could then see that these schools really do need the help. Not only that, but since the government had neglected them for so long, it seemed as if people, though, had felt a lack of worth and purpose. And I believe that we truly brought that to them. The people there didn't really feel much deserving of our help. They were doing everything possible to say thank you to us. I remember the day that I stepped onto the grounds of that school, the day that all the children arrived there. There's a dirt road that went right next to the school, and I could see the women carrying pots of food for us. They had created this huge dinner lunch for us so that we can celebrate with them. I don't even know if these families know if they're going to feed their children at night. But they were here making us this entire meal to make sure to show us that they were grateful. Later on that day, we would bump into families that we'd met at the school, and they would follow us around with every food item that they can find. They would follow us around with churros and give us so many things just to say thank you. I remember one of the women that I talked to at the school. She looked at me and she was embarrassed as to the poverty that we'd found them in, and she told me, you know, we're really poor, but what we do have is a lot of love. And I looked at her and I told her, where I live, there are so many wealthy people around me, but there's so much of a lack of love and selflessness. Never have I met people that are willing to give so much when they literally cannot give any more. With all these experiences that I had with Connection, I found that our church teaches us the same thing. Our church teaches us about solidarity. What the church then says is that we are one human family and that we must pursue justice and peace for everyone. I believe that Harrison and I really did this. When we went to Mexico, we went to go give justice to these people that had been neglected by the government. But not only did we bring justice to them, but they really brought justice into our own lives. I feel like we constantly lose sight of being selfless and loving and giving, and they brought this love into our own life. I had a lot of personal growth throughout this entire project. Not only was I able to communicate with people better, give more presentations, and fundraise and organize a bunch of things, but I also had a change of heart. I feel like I've been brought up in this culture where I have to go to college, I have to become successful and get a bunch of money. I didn't really feel content with that idea. But now, as I found what love is and this kind of selflessness that all these people brought into my life, I see that what I'm going to put my success into is helping more people. And that's what I want to continue to do for the rest of my life. I had read this quote before I'd gone to Mexico, and I never really had this link into my own life. It's a quote by John Henry Cardinal Newman, which states, "I am a link in a chain, a bond of connections between persons." It wasn't until after I went on the trip that this really resonated with me. People here were willing to give money to those in need, and the people in Mexico were in need of that money. It just took Harrison and I to be those two people to create that link between the two groups of people. I encourage each and every one of you to find where you are the link, where you link two groups of people together that are in need. I'd like to thank Mr. Jauregui and Ms. Mercedes, who were my mentors in Mexico, Mr. Clark and Matt Conley for helping us so much here, my family for making tamales and everything else that they did for us, for Newman for having us make this project, and for the children and families for teaching us so much love. They gave me this necklace, and they said that it's a key, represents the key to their school, and that I'm welcome back anytime. If you know me, you know that I hate promises, but I told them that I promised that I'd be back, and that is a promise I am willing to keep. Thank you.